So what I didn't know is the thing that broke me the most was actually breaking me open. And if it hurts the most, you'll heal the most. That is the biggest lesson I've learned with regards to love. So this is the second episode of the Spiritual Awakening series, and this episode is going to be about love and spiritual awakenings and how they shattered me, but actually made me such a better person. I am someone who gives so much of myself to my relationships. Like I am like all encompassing. I was that person that wants to live in your pocket, and I love you so deeply, like unbelievable amounts. And unfortunately in the past I would attach so much of my worth and value to a lot of my relationships. And it's when it ended, it would really impact my mental health like catastrophically. I wouldn't say that I probably took me on average a year to 2 years to get over most of my breakups. And it's not so much to do with them, it was that resistance to learn the lesson, that resistance to lean into the spiritual awakening, or that resistance to understand myself and why I feel the way I do. So let's have a look at the one who showed me that I deserve better. I'd met this guy and we fell madly in love very quickly. He was like very attentive to my needs. He was so handsome. And he was very much like, yeah, like come live with me. That's fine. Blah blah blah. I think I was at university at this point, second time at university, and yeah, and it was all lovey and dovey and great until his mask started to fall off. Now, this guy led me down a path of I do these things like I know I used to go out, party, smoke weed every day, and I don't do these any things anymore. And then unfortunately he did start to do those things quite a lot, and he was quite disruptive with his behavior. But unfortunately he definitely had, he was a good guy, but I do believe that he was fighting a lot of demons of self-belief, and he didn't really think that highly of himself, which was so sad because I thought the sun shined out of his asshole, quite literally. I just adored him. I adored everything about him, and I wanted to sort of really try and help him move past these demons. And unfortunately, these things just kind of got worse, and we were sort of arguing all the time, and I was moving out, moving in. Um, so I would say I was comparing him to a previous relationship where I wasn't getting anything. Like I wasn't getting any calls, texts. This person wasn't really making any time for me. He was not ambitious. He was sort of sleeping on his family member's sofa. And not that I was attracted to that, but for whatever reason, I was with this person. And because I'd then moved into this, met this new guy who was just, had his own place, good job. He just seemed like he was together. I just really seen him as like a really great, fantastic thing. And he was really handsome. I will say I am a little bit, shallow when it comes to that. So this mask just kept slipping more and more and more, and he just wasn't able to keep up this charade anymore. And this old person of who he said he wasn't just really started to emerge. And he was just someone who was really quite self-disruptive, um, really quite guarded, did smoke a lot of weed, did, go out and do a lot of cocaine. And yeah, these things just seemed to get worse and worse and worse. And I generally stayed as long as I did because I couldn't get any better. I thought he was the cat that got the cream. I honestly thought he was the dog's bollocks. I did. And it just, and obviously that's just not, wasn't the case, but I didn't see that at the time. I was very young, very insecure, and I could see the potential of who he could be. This person at the start of the relationship, who he was who I kind of held on to, and he kind of really made me feel like that's who he wanted to be. And I really tried to believe that and support him with that. But of course it just doesn't happen. You can't change people, they have to want to change themselves. But when that relationship ended, there was a part of me that thought, because of how much I loved him and how much I believed he loved me, that he would go sort, if he loved me, he'd go sort himself out and he'd come back. No. 8 weeks later, my guy's got a new girlfriend. 8 weeks later. So I am even more crushed. I'm absolutely devastated. I've got like plunged into really dark depression again. I'm feeling that I'm obviously not good enough because he didn't want to change for me. He didn't even, he said he loved me, but it wasn't that important because he couldn't even change for me. And then I was fighting, like, couldn't even be the person he said he wanted to be. And I was really fighting these demons of like, oh, it must be me. Like, I'm obviously not worth fighting for. I can't even keep somebody who's got it together, and he's got a job and a house. Like, how do, like, a car. As I said, the one before him had nothing, so I'd really thought I'd fucking upgraded massively, which to an extent I did, but I kind of held on to that a little bit too much because character and chemistry is also really important. But as I said, I was very new in the love game, so I wasn't that aware of how much I did deserve better. But it wasn't until I'd gone into this deep depression of feeling really bad about myself, of not being good enough. I then was drinking a lot more, maybe going to raves and doing like drugs a bit more. I was sleeping around a lot more because I was just trying to make myself feel validated by doing all these things. But of course, a lot of us know that they don't make you feel good. They tend to make you feel worse, and they almost kind of steer you away from that feeling of, I guess, knowing that you are deserving. Then I just kind of realised that actually I was too good for him, and he knew it. And it took me 2 years, unfortunately, to realise that that was the case. I'd thought that I wasn't good enough and he'd gone and found better. But what he hadn't do is he couldn't keep up to this higher standard that he wanted for himself and that he knew he should be for me. So he then quickly moved on to somebody who was willing to put up with this lower vibration and this lower standard of person that he wanted to sort of didn't want to, sorry, that's the wrong word, but he couldn't grow past, and wasn't in that moment able to grow past. And I think that's a key takeaway there for a lot of us, is that it's never us. We have a bar for ourselves, and we have an expectation and a standard which is reasonable to have. And a lot of these times these people move on to people who are willing to accept this low standard of the person that they are, I guess, which is sad, but it is. And it was a really powerful realization for me. Brings me to the next guy who showed me that I was worthy. Like, I was so impressed by this guy. Like, he was everything the other guy had, but tenfold. Like, he was super ambitious, fairly confident. He was quite generous. And we'd go out and do really nice things. His friendship circle were people who were, I would say, were very affluent, like very like professional sort of people. And I found that so intimidating, like super intimidating. I'd just finished uni at this point. I hadn't even had I don't even, I think I'd just got a job when I'd got in that relationship or something along those lines. So I just felt so inferior, like around these people who had these really high end professional jobs. And with this guy who had this, like, had these businesses, and he just was super ambitious. And like, I feel like he wasn't that confident, but he kind of did carry himself well initially. We were so hot and heavy and so passionate, and we fell quite quickly, but it was mainly me doing the kind of chasing, as in like me trying to make arrangements to see him, me looking to see how and where things are going. And we ended up in a relationship and spending quite a bit of time with each other. But this person made me feel so insecure. Now, I think if I well, profession is going to make it obvious who it is, but anyway, this person was a DJ, and I feel like they have their own kind of connotations, don't they, of being a bit of a player. So I do think there was elements of that was my intuition kicking in. But what this did is, whether it's intuition or not, I was really insecure in that relationship, and I was extremely paranoid, to the point where I was checking his phone, to the point where I was checking his times with how long it took to get from A to B, like full on what psycho mode. Let's just be frank. Yeah, it made me possessive, controlling. I was really like so like like that. Like, oh, it was too much. It was so heavy. Of course, that come to an end. He could no longer put up with my psychotic behaviours. And that again devastated me. I thought, oh my God, I actually had someone who had it all, and we had it all together, and we, he got rid of me. I wasn't good enough to keep. I wasn't good enough for him to try and understand and try to work through. And I was never going to be in that circle anyway. Like, So after beating myself up for maybe a year and realizing that, I very much made myself the problem and I very much made myself to blame for a lot of it, that I realized that I wasn't. So, he was a terrible communicator. And whilst I was on his phone, I was finding things, and messages were being deleted. And I kind of navigated away from the things that I did find out about his character. So I did kind of have reasons to be insecure and reasons to maybe act the way I did, just maybe not as intensely as I did. I feel like they kind of threw me into lack of self control, and that wasn't who I was. And I think that's why it hurt so much, because I felt like I ended up being this person that I never was and I never wanted to be. And that's not how I wanted to be remembered. And I think that was an element of it, as well as I didn't want to be remembered as the one who was psycho, basically, either. Like we were just from different worlds, and that was fine. I was worthy, I was good enough, I was someone who was working on themselves. And I'd finished university, and I had so much to offer, eventually. But it was through my own insecurities of not feeling good enough and not feeling worthy, and so I didn't deserve him. Again, deserving again, but I just didn't think I was worthy of him. I did probably put a lot of my value and hold him to a very high esteem, which I don't think was completely accurate, if I'm honest with you. Don't get me wrong, good guy, lovely guy, all of them, all of my exes were good guys. I'm grateful for every single one of them. Another really great lesson, actually, that I did get from that is that he kind of gave me the spark of wanting to be a bit of an entrepreneur. I thought I fancied myself a little businesswoman, I did. Um, Failed a few. But yeah, I definitely would say that I felt so inspired by this person. And I took on a couple of business ventures that some did really well when I did beauty therapy. It gave me that belief that I could be more, because that's what it was, wasn't it? I felt inadequate amongst him and his peers, because I didn't really have anything going for me, and I didn't know anything past doing cleaning or healthcare. Not that I'm discrediting any of those jobs. God, even more recently, I've still done those jobs. But it's not knowing that you can do more and achieve more, and that's the bottom line, isn't it? It's like you can do whatever it is that makes you feel good, but if you know that that's not, you should be doing a little bit more, then like go for it. As I said, no one in my immediate circle, similar to university story, like was doing that, so it was really really new to me. But this person did actually inspire me to want to go down that road, which was quite nice, actually. This brings me to the third guy. Interesting. I feel like I sound like such a hussy, but I'm not a hussy. Well, I guess I was. But no, no, no. These are all very like I've only ever really had three or four boyfriends. Like, do I count him? Maybe five. Anyway, doesn't matter. Does it matter? No. But this brings me to the last guy. Now, this is actually my last relationship. So this guy was so full and fast. He wanted to live in my back pocket. He was calling my phone all the time. He was introducing me to his parents like pretty much 2 weeks within us being together. And I was kind of being a bit standoffish. I think I was, I had a pretty good career as worked in like social work, so I was like a social prescriber. And I think at this point as well, I was doing my beauty. Yeah, I was doing eyelashes and spray tans. But I was a bit more committed at this point, so I was quite focused on that. We were very passionate, but he was showing a lot of narcissistic behaviors with being excessively controlling. I mean, like, he would call me a good couple of times a day, hours in the evening, and with not really that much to say. He was saying that I couldn't go to parties. Really, I shouldn't go to parties without him, because that's not how they do things. That's weird. I'm weird for doing that. He kept really weirdly dragging up the past. Oh, I can't believe you used to do drugs. That's, oh my god. But it'd be like 2 in the morning, and my man's tossing and turning, and like yeah, it was weird. He and would just then be like, oh, I just can't understand, like have this weird upset. No, he wouldn't. And sometimes he wouldn't even talk to me about it. So he'd be tossing and turning, letting me know that there's a problem, and then completely ignoring me when I'm going, what's wrong, blah, blah, blah. And then I would just, get a message maybe that day or 2 days later, like, oh, remember the other night? Well, I just couldn't believe, I was thinking I couldn't believe you did drugs, and like weird shit like that. I knew that wasn't going to last, and it wasn't an if and when. And I could be in the middle of things with clients or really busy, and he'd be banging off my phone or texting me. And in the end, I just got sick of it. So yeah, that did finish. And whilst I wasn't that devastated, following that relationship, because we'd both agreed to go sober, so I hadn't been drinking for about a month. But what I did do is I really threw myself into my spiritual journey, personal development, like with getting back into the gym, journaling, meditating, reading. And that did me absolute wonders, like not having that typical cycle of trying to heal and understand things with the disruptive patterns of alcohol. um, and I feel like I'd learned so much about myself. Now, what I'd actually realized from that relationship is everything that this guy was with me and how he made me feel is exactly how I made the ex-partner feel previously, which was interesting. So I'd actually seen that I know exactly how he felt, with somebody being really overbearing, dragging up arguments, making them feel insignificant, making them feel a bit on edge about what they said, how they said things, because that is exactly how this guy made me feel. And it was absolutely incredible to be able to, like, oh my God, that's how blah, blah, blah felt. And it was weird because I was like, oh, it's my karma. That's how I felt. He was my karma. And it was a really interesting and really powerful place to be in, just to have that realization that that I could be the villain sometimes. Very hard and heavy to have to sit with you being the problem, um whether or not it was just cause or not. You can't, you it's not fair to be controlling of people. It's not fair to put people down or be angry, have angry outbursts, or drag up the past all the time. It's not fair. And it's having that realization that sometimes we were the problem, and sometimes people will come in our lives and they'll show us our karma. So what I kind of now know about myself and these relationships is that I am good enough, and I am worthy, and I am beautiful, and I do have a lot to offer. And when I next now get into a relationship, I haven't got to feel inferior, or like I don't have a lot to offer, or that I'm not beautiful. I know what the signs of healthy relationships are and healthy communication. I know how to balance accountability with not blaming them for everything and not blaming myself for everything. And it's really quite nice that, as a collective, that all these past relationships have taught me so much. And I feel like they're not just getting older and wiser. For me, it didn't feel like that. It feels like I have awoken and sort of put myself back in alignment with understanding who I am and what my soul's mission is and my soul purpose and who it is that I want to be and who my soul wants me to be. Well, my soul is me. But I'm trying to get at. So I guess all in all, like, they were all so powerful and so influential, and I generally feel that they all shaped me to be the person that I am today, because of the disruption that they actually caused in my life when I broke up with these people. It was just so all encompassing, and I put my everything and my all into trying to understand that. So as I said, I'd had the initial awakening, and these events that happen are, I guess, ways of how we explore and how we navigate some of the core beliefs that we have. So the events kind of trigger these core beliefs, and then we then navigate that healthily or unhealthily. Whether you do it through drinking and drugs and you don't really process it and unpack it properly, or we step into being in ourselves and analyzing how and why, and whether we have a therapist, or we do shadow work, or we do journaling, or we speak to a friend and we have that sort of that realization. But it's about understanding who it is that we are. And for me, it was trying to dissolve that belief system of not being good enough and not being worthy. I would definitely confident enough to know exactly what I deserve now. And it was through analyzing to death these depressive episodes that these relationships cause for me, that I understand myself now. And that does impact how I carry myself in my friendships and how I carry myself in my work relationships. So if you've had any breakups and you can connect to what I'm saying a little bit more, and maybe see some lessons in your relationships and what that's taught you about yourself, then I'd love to hear that in the comments. So don't forget to please like and subscribe. Please tune in to the next episode, which will be around friendships. And we will catch you next time. Bye.